So Magnus Carlsen rolling the dice once again with the King's Indian defence. We see it on the board here with these opening moves. You give white the centre and the way Magnus plays is very risky. So this is Norway versus mighty Moldova. Magnus's opponent here is Ivan Schitco. Now there's a name you don't want to mispronounce, right? So I think it's Schitco. Now he's 300 points, lower rated than Magnus. So that's why Magnus is mixing it up in the opening here. Given the space, he wants to have a tactical game. So we see this move now played of pawn h3 from Magnus's opponent. Now I absolutely love this move because after castles, bishop e3, very often white's going g4 and you stop black from doing the f5 play. At least black doesn't really get a good game with that. And if you're not doing that, what are you doing as black? You know, I love playing this myself. Give it a go if you haven't already. So Magnus now plays the 6th most common move. He plays knight c6. Very provocative, bringing a piece into the centre in front of those pawns, and d5 is played. Where's that knight going? Well, it hops forward, but now a3. It hops back. Keep your eye on how many times Magnus moves these knights here in the opening and middle game. It's pretty insane. So we get bishop d3. Now the knight comes to c5, targeting that piece. So it drops back to c2 here. By the way, if bishop takes, not so hot. You give up your best piece and you're just helping black really. So we see bishop c2, b4 coming soon, knight fd7 therefore played. Now you can't go b4 or you drop a knight. So knight g to e2 supports this one, prepares b4, and so a5 from Magnus. Very standard clamp. b4 still could have been played. The line goes something like this, but knight a6, you target the pawn, queen b2, c5. Game goes on, but it's still very provocative. You know, b5 could come, but then knight b4, etc. So b4 just gets held off on. We get castles. Now knight b6 from Magnus, moving those knights once again, targeting this pawn. So b3 covers, and now Magnus finally claims some central space for himself with pawn to e5. And if you capture, well now pawn can recapture, and you're giving Magnus what he wants, a bit of a dynamic position. Open f-file for the rook. The bishop's diagonal would be open once more. Maybe you push d5 one day. So the centre remains closed. Rook b1 played. Looking at b4, looking to plough down over there on the queen side of the board. So Magnus, what does he do? Moves a knight, of course. He's doing great on this side quest to move the knights as many times as he can. We get bishop d3, knight back, bishop c2, knight back. Don't tell me it's a draw. Well, no, I would never do that to you. Bring you a, 16 move draw. If you're not subscribed already, do hit subscribe. I'll never bring you rubbishy games. Now we get the bishop back to d3, and here Magnus does not repeat. As promised, he goes for f5, the tried and tested move in the King's Indian. So f3 played by white. Now the knight comes back to c5. I told you about these knights, right? We finally get b4, sheds this bishop, but it was the bad bishop staring at its own pawns here, and now knight d7. What other piece to move, right? Now we get c5. White making tremendous progress over there on the queen side. Magnus takes, pawn recaptures. Now the knight moves, of course. What else? Look at that trio of pieces on the back rank here that literally have not developed from their starting squares. They're just chilling. You guys get on with it. We'll spectate. Now rook a1 played, and it's not the most ambitious move. You know, you see this evaluation bar react here. It's about 1.3 to white if you do say c6, queen c4, that kind of thing. Keep tension on the board. If you're the one with the space, generally speaking, trading pieces favours your opponent and not you. So now we get takes on e4 from Magnus. By the way, if he wanted to take here, rook recaptures, then go f4, g5, h5, all that kind of stuff, rawr, as Ben Feingold would say. Well, actually, it's not so hot. You know, white's already a long way advanced with the queenside counterplay. They're quicker to the punch. So that's why Magnus takes. Knight takes, the more ambitious move, bit more of a weirder pawn structure, but we get pawn takes, more symmetrical, rook takes, knight h5 from Magnus, and white brings that rook back to the f-file, trading down pieces now. You know, not playing ambitiously here, wanting to filter out to a draw, but obviously Magnus does not want that. So he goes queen f6 check. Now the king can sidestep, but we get bishop blocks, suddenly relinquishing some control of this square. So in springs the knight, and now you don't have to take that knight. You could come here, you know, start targeting some stuff, looking at that square. But again, white just trying to steer towards a draw, takes that pawn, but hang on. You've now opened this queen bishop battery on the knight. It jumps to b5. That looks nasty for black, but Magnus lands a check. You can block with the bishop, but white now goes for a wander and things get interesting here. So king e2 played, queen b2 check, king f3. The computer now gives it a dead level position, and Magnus, smelling blood, goes on the hunt with pawn to g5. Now hang on, isn't your entire queen side collapsing here? Well, white takes, sure enough, best move. But now h5 from Magnus, g4 coming. But what's this about? You know, what if white takes with the knight here, preparing knight e6 to shut out this piece? Well, now it's mate in 5. This is how quick the King's Indian can turn, because you check like this, captures, bishop takes check. Now this king takes the pawn, forced, but you check. You're driving the king all around to the right square, and then bang, this shuts the trap on that king. Look at this with the bishops. I saw something earlier actually, by the way. When you deliver a checkmate just with the bishops, pretend the queen wasn't there, it's called the bombardier checkmate. Just using these bishops here, really cool. Anyway, coming back here, so we didn't see this second pawn captured. White alive to the danger, goes bishop d4 to trade this pesky dark squared monster, but g4 check comes anyway from Magnus. Pawn captures, bishop captures, the king takes on f4. Now Magnus is giving up a lot of pawns here, but he then picks up this one, and the king is still drafty. We see takes on g7, king recaptures, and now guess what? If you take here, once again, you're wandering straight into a checkmate with queen f2. Obviously, if the queen blocks, we take using the bishop, and you're going to get mated soon. So if the king steps either way or to this square, then you shut the trap like this using the support of the king. So the pawn immune, we see pawn e5 to now give the king a square. If you go here, you can go here, and this is no good. The problem now is this pawn, sorry, so it didn't give a square, it covered a square. Now, when the king steps to g5, you can't land the mate here because the pawn covers the square. So that's why Magnus goes king h6 to stop king g5. Queen f2 check threat renewed, and so that's why queen e3 played. You know, no more munching on pawns, but it gives Magnus the chance to take, knight captures, and pick up a pawn, restoring the material balance. The king's still in the center. Can Magnus drum anything up? So he hops with knight e4 here, Magnus's opponent. We get king g6, stepping off of this x-ray. Now queen b6 check, and what does Magnus do? Well, he blocks with the queen. He really didn't have much better. We see takes, and here the game was agreed a draw, even though Magnus's opponent is an entire queen up. What is going on right now in the world of chess? I hope you enjoyed this game. Thanks very much for watching. By the way, for very new players to chess, yes, Magnus would have recaptured the queen. It is a technical draw. I hope to see you again soon, and cheers.